like to talk a little bit today about English walnuts in the Northeast. John Gordon was a longtime member of the New York nut growers and the northern nut growers, and John started a lot of citizen science projects, and one of them was with English walnuts. And so what he did was he got seed from 5 different of the best cultivars known at that time from Ernie Grimmo, and he distributed some of that. Some of that seed was distributed to members in New York State, but they also John also planted out a trial in Trumansburg, which is near Ithaca, New York, and that's a picture of the trial. And it was a small trial, 5 cultivars, 6 seedlings of each of the cultivars, and so we're monitoring that trial. Didn't get any nuts last year because we had a hard freeze on May 18th. Got down to 26 degrees, and we didn't get any walnuts, and we didn't get any apples. It's planted on a 15-foot grid, and it was planted around 2005. But anyway, that's kind of the start of what we've been doing in New York State, and it's been continued by John Wirtis, who was the longtime president of the New York Nut Growers, and Jerry Hankin. Next slide, Jeff. So walnuts they're good food. Made up of 65% fat and 15% protein. It's the good kind of fat. Got a lot of good nutrition in there. High in antioxidants. A bunch of different types of antioxidants. And I think the bottom line is that all the nuts are good, as you all know. But just think if we all put some more nuts in our diet, our healthcare costs in the United States might go down a little bit. Next one. So we've been finding a lot of the trees that are adapted to our area on Mennonite farms in the Finger Lakes of New York. So that's basically a Zone 6A area. It is they tend to be high lime soils, and these are folks that are using them at home. So these are old order Mennonites. They're horse and buggy Mennonites, and most every family that I know of has 1 or 2 or more English walnuts planted on their property. And one thing about it is because they dehiss and fall free from the husk, that makes them desirable for them taking care of them at home. And they are not strangers to not wanting to do any more labor than anybody else does, but they do use them. So that's a big plus, and I think that's why the dominant nut tree that they have at their homes are English walnuts. Next one. So English walnuts, Persian walnuts, they're monoecious. They've got male and female flowers on the same tree, but they're separate. They can self-pollinate, but they also have a method of outcrossing in that in some of the trees, the male flower will release pollen before the female is receptive. In other trees, the female flower will be receptive before the male flower sheds pollen, and so that's their outcrossing strategy. Next one. So we're basically looking for trees that are adapted to zone 5 and 6, which are a good chunk of New York State. And again, most of the trees we've found so far are adapted to zone 6, but we have found some trees that are doing well in zone 5. And you can see some of the things that we're interested in looking at. But again, the main thing is that they're adapted to the length of the growing season where they're located or where you want to plant them. Next one. So my site, for example, is Zone 5B. I've got roughly 140 growing days, frost-free days, and it's a pretty short season area. But English walnuts, we don't find as many there, but in that type of a situation, but we are finding some there. So breeders, amateurs from the northern nut growers have been looking for years, especially in the eastern United States, for late flowering individuals to escape that late spring frost. But if they flower late, they tend to also be less susceptible to walnut blight because it tends to be a little drier at that time. On the other end of the season, what you'd like to happen ideally is that the nuts would drop and you'd have a couple weeks after that where the leaves are still there so they can continue to put carbohydrates, store carbohydrates for the winter time. I'm one of the, I think dwarf trees would be an advantage, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So this is one of the trees on a Mennonite farm. You can see some of the things that we're looking at. Probably flavor, lack of bitterness is one of the main things that we look at. But shell thickness, ease of cracking, obviously, ease of extracting the kernel is important. Most of the trees that we are looking at are healthy trees. This tree is in, again, it's in Zone 6, but this is a tree that came from Pennsylvania when the Mennonites migrated to New York about 30 years ago. The origin of this particular tree we don't know, but it's got good flavor and nice light kernels. Frost hardiness is important to have the adaptation to an area. It's a combination of as you go into winter, the water content of the cells decreases and the sugar content increases. And ideal situation is that you'd like the cooling going into the fall to be slow and steady. But that doesn't always happen. Again, last year we not only had that hard frost in the spring, but then in the fall of the year we had it was nice and warm, and the trees were getting ready for winter. They were senescing, but then the bottom dropped out of the thermometer, and some of the trees didn't, at my location, again a short season area, didn't quite harden off. So what happened was you had dead end of the branches, and that had to be pruned off. Another challenge with English walnuts is that the buds are extremely sensitive in the springtime, and they're prone to opening up too early, and so again with fluctuating temperatures, that's a challenge for them. Most of the again we're looking at homeowner trees in just about every case, and there's a lack of soil testing or tissue testing, and that's something that should be done. In our area, boron is quite often very low in the soil. it leaches, and it's got to be resupplied on a regular basis, and it's important for pollination and yield, as also zinc is another one. And so a good soil test program is a good place to start, and that's something that we see a lack of. Next one, Jeff. Walnuts form a mutually beneficial relationship with mycorrhizal fungi. The hickories form that relationship primarily with ectomycorrhizae. Ectomycorrhizae form this structure called a Hartig net in between the cells, and the walnuts form a relationship with endomycorrhizae, and the difference is that they form a structure called an arbuscule within the cell, and that's where nutrient exchange occurs. So what happens is that the tree supplies the fungus with carbohydrates, and in exchange for that, the fungus supplies the trees with phosphorus, some other nutrients, and water as well. So, next slide. Walnuts have a kind of a coarse root architecture. So from that means that they're more reliant on the mycorrhizal fungi, because what the mycorrhizal fungi do is the fine hyphae of the mycorrhizal fungi increases the volume of soil that can be explored by the tree by at least 10x, if not more. So it's very important. Researchers have found that seedlings that are inoculated with mycorrhizal fungi have less mortality when they're planted, especially under stressful conditions, because they're a lot better at taking up water and nutrients. Another interesting thing is one of the studies, an agroforestry study that I looked at, they had walnuts, and in between, in the alleys, they had planted corn. And the walnuts and the corn were joined through the mycorrhizal fungi, and they demonstrated nutrient transfer between corn and walnuts. So I thought that was pretty neat, and that probably occurs with all the plants, or many of the plants in the orchard understory. So this whole area of mycorrhizal fungi, and there's many species. It's not just one species that infect walnuts, but there's many species. And then you have things like plant growth promoting bacteria. It's very, very interesting, and we're learning as we go. Back when I was in college, you didn't hear anything about that type of thing. Negatives for the formation of this mutually beneficial association: high phosphorus levels, because that's one of the main things that the mycorrhizal fungi help the walnuts take up. Too much phosphorus, they don't need to form that relationship. The other things are tillage, because the tillage slices up the hyphae, so that's not good. And then fungicides. Next one. So what we've been doing is in the fall we visit trees of interest, and that's the time when we collect nuts, and then we've been sharing them with people to help us evaluate them. These were some trees that we visited last winter. We didn't get there in the fall because we didn't know about them. John Wurtis, who was the past president of the New York Nut Growers, John had tracked these down years ago, and they kind of got lost, and I just happened to have a phone conversation with him, and he sent me all the documentation. And so this gentleman in the picture there, Lou Ward, helped track these down, and these are seedlings of Kraft 22 Carpathian walnuts. Paul Kraft was instrumental in bringing Carpathian walnuts from his homeland of Poland over in the 1920s and 30s. And S.H. Graham was a well-known nurseryman near Ithaca, New York, and he worked closely with Reverend Kraft. And so Kraft 22 was a tree that they really liked. And so you can see this one tree, the part of the trunk fell off or broke off and almost hit the homeowner's house. And the other part is over his barn, so he was in the process of taking it down. So this was more of a rescue mission. We did get scion wood, and I'm not sure whether any of our grafters have takes yet, but hopefully they did. So the trees on the left there, not sure whether they had bunch disease or not, so we stayed away from them. But there were two trees that looked like they were healthy, so we sampled from those. The beauty of if you had a dwarf tree, the beauty of it is that you wouldn't have to go up in a bucket truck. Next slide. So, a shorter statured tree would make pruning and spraying easier, and just like in apples, if you can increase the density, it gives you more efficient land use, helps photosynthetic efficiency, etc. Breeders have been finding what they think are have the characteristics of a dwarf tree, even in a nursery where the mother trees are primarily tall trees. And one of the researchers, he's developed, he's looked at the different dwarfing characteristics and claims that you can measure the comparative height of the seedlings, and that alone will tell you the dwarfing potential. So the thought is that maybe down the road, these dwarfing rootstocks could be used just like with the apple industry to dwarf trees. So this is a picture of the tree on the left is Hansen, and Hansen is a natural dwarf, and it only grows to the size of a standard apple tree. Northern Prize is another one that's also a small tree like that. So here's a situation where the scion would dwarf the tree. Next slide. This is a tree of interest to me. I wish I knew more about the history of it. The owner does not know anything about the history of it, but it's at 1,600 feet. There's nothing on the west side of that, so it's battered by winter winds. It's on a somewhat poorly drained soil. The pH is probably 5.2, and there's no English walnuts around it, and it's putting out quite a crop. And the other thing, I don't know if it shows up really well, but it's never been pruned. You can see all the dead wood on there. And if you remember, again, back to Sunday night and the lighting picture, so what you see on this tree is it drops nuts of varying sizes. And I'm pretty sure what's going on is that the interior of the tree is not getting enough light, and that's where the small nuts are. But what would that, even now, if it was cleaned up, took all that dead wood out of there, how would that change it? It'd be interesting. Next slide. I like the red walnuts. I think they're really pretty. They're supposed to have a less bitter aftertaste in them than the tan walnuts, and I think they'd have a potential for in a niche market in the Northeast. So I have I have a seedling, so I'm in zone 5B. The problem with them is that they're not winter hardy enough. But I have a seedling of red Danube. It's been through one winter, so, and this was a very mild winter, but it's doing great on my property. So I was told the way to increase winter hardiness in these is we just have to cross them with more cold hardy trees. Next slide. Huskfly maggot was more prevalent last year. We noticed most of these homeowners know, these Mennonite farmers know what causes the problem, but they really don't know how to control it. So that's an education process that we can work on. Next slide. Here are two more trees on Mennonite farms. The tree on the left produces kind of an oblong nut. It's very thin-shelled. It's an easy cracker, and it's got good flavor. So this is one definitely a tree of interest. The tree on the right is on a different farm, and that farmer has a bunch of walnuts. Again, the origin of them, many of them, he doesn't know what the origin is. But the tree shown is his favorite as far as flavor goes. And we do, that's a controversial thing probably on flavor, but we do find differences. An extreme case is that one tree that is a very healthy tree produces a great nut, but it's just bland. There's no walnut flavor to it. So, next slide. Weed is one of the most important things when you're establishing walnuts. Of course, in New York, the deer pressure is terrible. So you see, in my case, I'm using tree tubes. But weed control is important, especially grass control. A variety of ways to address that. I'm using organic herbicides because I'm trying to stay away from glyphosate. This year I'm using one called Weed Zap, which is a mixture of cinnamon oil and clove oil. And it's okay. It doesn't work really good on the waxy coated species like perennial ryegrass and fescue, but it works good on the other ones. What it does is it burns the foliage back, and you gotta reapply. But I'm getting good growth with no nitrogen fertilizer so far, because I want to make sure that they're winter hardy enough. But next slide. So anyway, we need more people working on English walnuts, and I've talked to people throughout the upper Midwest, and there are healthy English walnuts growing throughout the upper Midwest. The northern nut growers, years ago, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of people working on English walnuts, and it's a good tree. Produces a healthy nut. It's whether it's got commercial potential in the east, that I can't say, but it's worthy of more people getting involved. Next slide. So right now I don't do any of the grafting, but I did want to thank some of our cooperators. So folks that are grafting, Cindy DeFelice is another member of the New York nut growers. She's using hot pipe callousing. A lot of our things that we're trialing are coming from Ernie and Linda at Grimo Nut Nursery, and Ernie, of course, is using the hot pipe callus. Schlabox is a Amish nursery, and they have a greenhouse. And Jeff Zarnowski is also using hot pipe callousing. So we have distributed seed of trees of interest, and also we're doing grafting, and we're trying to get some of those grafted trees out. So thank you.
Any questions for Carl? Okay, I'll take this gentleman back here.
Where did the moniker English walnut come from? It seems to be pretty much of a misnomer.
It is. You probably ought to call it a Persian walnut. I just started calling it English walnut. Persian walnut, English walnut, Carpathian walnut, they're all Juglans regia.
A question over here, yes.
I appreciate you talking about the mycorrhizal connection and importance there. And maybe there's something I could email you about, but I would just be curious about particular inoculation recipes that you found success with for walnut.
The question was my method of inoculation. I've just been using a product from microbes, and if I'm planting seed, I'll coat the seed with it, or sometimes I just if I'm planting a grafted tree, I'll use a watering can and water it in around the root system. I know. Forest Keeling there, you might want to talk to them because they have been inoculating.
Is there any difference in vigor if it's on black walnut rootstock versus English walnut rootstock versus its own roots?
That's something that the question was changes in vigor if it's on Persian walnut, black walnut rootstock. That's something that we've been asking ourselves. A lot of folks think that if it's on black walnut rootstock, it'll be more winter hardy, but we haven't been able to. We just don't have the infrastructure to do that kind of experiment. It'd be a good one to do.
Okay, Carl.